I believe the biggest problem in the world is that people don't understand themselves enough. This show is designed to help you understand your INFJ personality, heal from your past, and create a life that you love. I'm Sarah Kuhn, and this is the Quiet Ones podcast. The Quiet Ones podcast is presented by Nanocraft CBD. Nanocraft was built on a simple mission: create exceptional CBD products that contribute to overall health. CBD is a natural, organic, and holistic option for a wide range of health concerns, including better sleep, reduced anxiety, and improved overall health. Recent studies have shown that CBD can alleviate feelings of anxiety and elevate your mood thanks to its ability to increase levels of the neurotransmitter of serotonin. Low levels of serotonin have been linked to depression. Traditional medications that are prescribed to patients with depression are designed to elevate levels of serotonin in order to give your mood a boost. And CBD oil has the same effect without the side effects of prescription antidepressants. I was diagnosed with major depression in 2014. I spent more than a year trying to find an antidepressant prescription medication that would work for me, with no success. I couldn't find one that I could tolerate because of the side effects. Along with depression, I have a general anxiety disorder, which leaves me feeling stressed, anxious, nervous, and scared a lot of the times. So a friend of mine suggested that I try CBD oil instead of prescription medication. So I got a bottle of the broad spectrum CBD oil from Nanocraft, and I took it every single day. I noticed results within 2 days. My anxiety was substantially lower. My mood shifted out of feeling numb and depressed to feeling more hopeful and happy. If you have depression, anxiety, or are just feeling down, because let's be honest, who hasn't felt off with everything that's going on in the past couple of years? You need to give Nanocraft CBD a try. Get 10% off your order when you order through the link at infjwoman.com/CBD. That's infjwoman.com/CBD. There's a link in the show notes. Are you in tune with your intuition? Does it speak to you loud and clear, or do you question the messages that you get from it? I have to admit that I'm not always 100% in tune with my intuition as much as I would like to be. It's so easy to let all of the day-to-day things get in the way. But I want to help you get back on track and get perfectly in tune with your intuition. So I created a 30-day challenge to help you get really clear on what your intuition is trying to tell you and to help you tune in. The Tune Into Your Intuition Challenge offers simple, structured daily lessons and exercises that will get you in tune with your inner guide and make it easier for you to hear that inner voice that's trying to tell you exactly what you need to do. I've mastered this practice through my own deep desire to listen to my inner guide. Spending time listening to my intuition is the most important thing that I do every single day. It's kept me calm, healthy, and grateful no matter what may be going on in my life. You might find this kind of personal growth intimidating or think it's impossible to make these kinds of changes, or that you don't have time to dedicate to this challenge. I'm going to help you get through those fears right now, though. I've laid out a plan for you, and I'll guide you every single step of the way. It doesn't matter whether you've been leaning into your intuition for years or are a complete beginner. All you have to do is show up. And here's my promise. By the end of this 30-day challenge, you'll have a solid foundation of guidance, a calm and grateful mind, and an improved connection to your inner guide. The Tune Into Your Intuition Challenge starts January 1st, but if you sign up now, you'll gain first access to all of the prep work that will set you up for the extraordinary changes available to you in this challenge. Sign up now at infjwoman.com/intuition. There's a link in the show notes. Sign up now and consider your New Year's resolutions taken care of. Go to infjwoman.com/intuition to sign up now. Today we're talking about how to distinguish your intuition from everything else that's going on in your head. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, honestly. I've had trouble with it in the past, especially when you get this feeling that you're supposed to do something and it seems weird and unreasonable, and you're like, that can't be the thing that I'm supposed to do. So let's start with talking about what actually is intuition so that we all have a basic understanding of what intuition really is. The basic thing, especially when you're talking about Myers-Briggs, they kind of define it as you read between the lines and you see a bigger meaning behind what people say. So that's part of it. It works together for INFJs. Your introverted intuition works together with your extroverted feeling, right? So extroverted feeling gives you the ability to feel what other people are feeling, basically, and it means that you focus on other people's feelings before you focus on yourself. Your intuition helps you to process all of that information that you're gaining from everybody else and make sense of it. The opposite of intuition would be sensing, right? So people who have a sensing personality, they take what is said at face value, right? So they don't see any meaning behind what you say. They have a more difficult time reading between the lines. Whatever you say to them, that's what they think that you mean. You've probably gotten into conversations, maybe arguments with people who are a sensing type, and the thing that keeps ringing in my mind is like when you're dating somebody who has a sensing type, and usually people equate this with like men and women communicating differently, but that's not always the case, right? When you say one thing but you mean another thing, and you think that your partner is supposed to understand what you said even though you didn't say what you meant. And I'm sure we've all been there. I've been there many, many times. And it's difficult sometimes, especially when you don't understand people's personality. When you understand that that's what people do, then you start looking for that meaning. There are several people in my life. I know that that's what they do. They say one thing and they mean another thing. And once you get to know them, then you can read into what it is that they're saying. Some people don't have the ability to do that whatsoever. They take everything that you say at face value, and that's just what it is. But we, as INFJs, have this powerful intuition, so we're able to see what people are really talking about, to see what they mean. We're able to read the things that they're not saying. It helps us read people really well. It helps us follow along conversations very well. It also helps us to know things, right? So there have been multiple times when people are talking to me. I recall a story about my niece was telling me something, that she got hurt, and she's telling me this story, and I'm like, the whole time she's telling me the story, I'm like, this is not what happened. Like, the story makes sense, and it is something that we have done in the past. So it could have happened, right? But I just had this feeling, I'm like, that's not what happened. And so I called her out on it, and I'm like, okay, but tell me like the truth, because this is not what actually went down. And she was like, oh, like, well, okay, that it really wasn't like like you're right. I'm not actually telling you the truth. And I was like, yeah, I know that. Just tell me the truth. Like, I don't care what the story is, just tell me the truth. So that's part of it, right? It's reading between the lines, it's reading people. Another part of it is knowing things about people when you first meet them. You get a feeling about whether somebody is a good person or not a good person. You get a feeling about whether they're telling you the truth about really just their whole personality. And then you get feelings too about things that you should do with your life, like decisions that you should make, the direction that you should be going. I wrote a whole chapter on intuition in my book that's called the INFJ User Guide. And I started the chapter with a definition from dictionary.com about what intuition is, because each one of the things rings true specifically for us. The first definition is a direct perception of truth, fact, which is independent of any reasoning process, immediate apprehension. I wouldn't say it's independent of reasoning process. I would just say that the reasoning process goes so quickly that it feels like it's independent. But that's what we were talking about with just like knowing things about people. The second definition is a fact, truth, perceived in this way. That's also like knowing when people are telling you the truth and when they're not. Knowing when, even when they're not necessarily lying, they're just not saying what they mean. Being able to perceive that. The third definition is a keen and quick insight. To me, that is making connections in our head very quickly, seeing patterns, which is almost like, it feels like predicting the future, but it's not really. It's just that most of what people do is habit. And so once you recognize their patterns, you know what's going to happen in the future. And then the fourth definition is the quality or ability of having such direct perception or quick insight. So it's just knowing what's going to happen and knowing it quickly, or knowing things about other people. The words immediate apprehension really caught my eye because that's what intuition feels like. It's like you're talking to somebody and you just know, and it feels like this instant knowing. And it's kind of a quiet feeling or a quiet voice in your head. And especially if you've ignored it for a long time, or if you push that voice down, then it kind of gets quieter and quieter and quieter. And it feels really weird. First of all, it feels weird to talk about it because a lot of people don't know what it is. It feels weird also because it's like, I don't have any proof. I don't have any concrete evidence. I just have this feeling that it's overwhelming and it's impossible to ignore. One of the big feelings that I get is about other people. And I've met quite a few people actually. And I just know from the first time that I meet them that like, this is not a good person. This is not a person that I trust or that I want to spend a lot of time around. And when you tell other people that, you seem incredibly judgmental and very rude. Like you're judging a book by its cover, right? And so it's difficult to say, to tell other people who don't understand intuition, or maybe it's not one of their functions that they use a lot. They just jump to the conclusion that you're really rude. Like you're judging people and you shouldn't be judging people. And it takes a while. For me, when I've had that feeling, I've learned not to talk about it so much. And I've learned to just kind of like hide and watch. And usually those people, it's kind of like, your sins will find you out. And the truth comes out eventually. And then everybody starts to see, it's like, see, this is what I was telling you about. They're not good people. I don't know how I knew. I just knew. So a lot of times we lose track of our intuition, right? We're born with this natural ability to just know things, but when we start telling people about it and they don't get it, they give us a lot of the whole, you're judgmental, you jump to conclusions, you're just wrong. Like, why would you say stuff like that? It's just rude to say stuff like that. I've heard that quite a bit, which is generally why I don't tell people a lot about the feelings that I have. Because of those things, we ignore our intuition. Sometimes we just get a weird feeling about like, I think I'm supposed to be a writer. Even though I am terrible at spelling and I've never liked writing and it doesn't make any sense for me. I feel like I should be a writer. And you're like, that's just weird. Like, why would I do that? And so you just kind of put the feeling away and you're like, I don't know what that is. I'm just gonna ignore it. I had this feeling that I should move to North Carolina. And I ignored that for like 10 years before I finally did it. And it became one of the best things that I've ever done. So because we ignore our intuition, we push it down, we just basically walk away from it, then we lose faith in our own ability to know. And so we get stuck in questioning and overthinking. And it almost feels like paranoia in your head, right? Because it's like it's almost like my mind is telling me to do this one thing, and then my reasoning is like, that doesn't make sense. And so you get into this like overthinking loop that almost makes you feel like you're crazy, because it's not just like you overthink about it once for like an hour or something. It's like you overthink it constantly for a long time. Sometimes weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years, like I did. And you don't know how to get out of that feeling. You don't know how to get out of that loop. The only thing that you do is just like basically ignore it. So then what happens? You lose faith in your intuition and you're just constantly ignoring it. And maybe you're focusing on reasoning. I focused on reasoning for a long time and logic. Like, what's the most logical thing to do? My parents were very logical people, and my dad used to make us my siblings and he used to make us sit through these conversations that were like, let's reason this out. And it's like, oh God, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Like, whatever I said, I didn't mean it. The most glaring example to me is like, we used to get those things in the mail that would say like, you can get 1,000 CDs for a penny, and every time we'd get one, and this was like when CDs were brand new and they were like the thing. And so of course you wanted 1,000 CDs, right? And you had to have a credit card, and we were like, I don't know, 10 or 12 years old. And so, we get these things in the mail and go ask my dad for his credit card because it's like, it's 1,000 CDs and it's a penny. And he's like, no, sit down. Let's reason this out. And we're like, oh God, never mind. I don't want them. I'm sorry. And he's like, no, let's talk about this. How much does a CD cost? And we're like, and you'd have to go through the whole thing. Like, why would they be giving you 1,000 CDs for a penny when one CD in the store costs like $15? That doesn't make any sense. And literally these conversations would last like 2 or 3 hours. And I used to hate them back then, but now I appreciate the ability to reason things out because I've realized that a lot of people don't have that ability. But for the longest time, instead of relying on my intuition, I was just like, no, let's just go with the most reasonable thing. What's the most reasonable thing to do, right? What makes the most logical sense? A lot of what we do is habit as well. That's something that is important to keep in mind. In fact, 95% of what we do and what we think is a habit. So if you've been taught to ignore your feelings, then you will just instinctively ignore them. That's your habit. That's what you do. If you've been hurt, if people have told you, you're judgmental, you jump to conclusions, you're just wrong, like you need to stop. That's what I was told. Then you want to protect yourself, right? You don't want to be hurt again. And so when those feelings come up of, ooh, there's something wrong with this person, then you just keep going over those things that you were told, like you're judgmental, you need to stop being judgmental. So you'll learn to protect yourself from that hurt, which means ignoring your intuition. If you're a people pleaser, I am a recovering people pleaser. When I was younger, I was a massive people pleaser. So if somebody told me, that I was judgmental, then I would go way out of my way to not be judgmental. I didn't want to disappoint people. I didn't want to let them down. And so I would do whatever it was they were telling me to do. And so when I had this idea that I wanted to move to North Carolina, the people around me said, that's insane. Like, why would you do that? That's 1,000 miles away from your family. So why would you do that? In an effort to please them, I decided it wasn't the best thing to do for a long time. So then what happens is you get into this habit of ignoring your intuition, right? You've lost your ability, you've lost the faith that you have in yourself, in your intuition, and you get scared. You get scared to even trust your intuition. A lot of INFJs, we have high anxiety to begin with, right? We worry about other people because we're so focused on how other people feel, and we're focused on making other people comfortable. We don't want to disappoint anyone. In fact, that's probably one of our biggest fears collectively. And some of us, like myself, even have an anxiety disorder as well. So on top of having an already high level of anxiety, it becomes something that is really, really difficult to control, right? So when we're making big decisions, or when we're meeting new people, when we get these feelings, we want to know what's the right thing, right? We want to make the right decision about our lives. We want to have the right friends around us. We want to say the right things and do the right things. And we get stuck on what's right and what we should do. So a good example of this is when I wanted to move to North Carolina, and I felt like I should move to North Carolina. I felt like I needed to be away from my family and do my own thing. But when I told my parents about it, they were like, that's not a good decision. Like, you'll be 1,000 miles away from your family. What happens if something bad happens? What if you get a flat tire? You don't know how to change a tire on your car. What if you get mugged? What if there's a murderer on the loose in your neighborhood? My mom had this ability to come up with like the worst things, and she would constantly be asking me all these questions like, what are you going to do if? And for the longest time I was like, oh, you're right, I don't know how to change a tire on my car. Like, what am I going to do? If I get a flat tire on the way to North Carolina, I'm just going to have to buy a house and live there? I mean, like, I don't know what to do. And the other thing too was like, I was this massive people pleaser. So if my mom was like, no, that's not a good idea, then I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do it. And then I felt this massive amount of guilt too, right? Because I was the helper. I was the one who did all the things that nobody else wanted to do, like all of the chores, the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry. We had a pretty big family because there were 4 kids in our family, and nobody else did any of those things except for my mom and I. We were the only ones. So it felt really selfish for me to actually move, to be 1,000 miles away from them. And so instead of saying, this feels like the right thing for me to do, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I can't, I just can't do that. And when you ignore your intuition in one thing, it gets easier and easier and easier to just keep ignoring your intuition until you really don't know what you're supposed to do. And, like I said before, you get stuck in this loop of logic and feeling, and you just keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I mean, really, when it comes down to it, a lot of it comes back to fear, right? It's a fear of disappointing people, it's a fear of making the wrong decision, it's a fear of looking like you're judgmental, it's a fear of people not understanding what you're doing, it's a fear that, you don't even trust yourself. So, how do you distinguish your intuition? How do you start to notice those feelings again and trust your intuition? It's kind of a process of getting back there. The first thing that you have to do is you have to notice the fear that you have. You have to notice the feelings that you have. When you have a feeling of intuition, like, I just know that I need to do something, or I just know something about this person who's standing in front of me who I've never met, but I really don't like them. Or maybe I know they're a really good person. It goes either way. I always focus on the negatives. So it's a stronger feeling for me when I don't like somebody, right? But you notice those feelings. You don't have to change them. You don't have to worry about them. You just have to notice them. You have to see that they're there. You have to notice your habits too. The same way that you wake up in the morning and brush your teeth the same way every single day, you probably don't even have to open your eyes and look at where the toothpaste is. You just know where it is because you keep it in the same place and you brush your teeth the same way. You probably even start on the same side of your mouth. Whether it's top or bottom, you probably brush your teeth the same way every single day. I bet you do. I've been noticing that because once I started reading about how everything that we do is habit, then I've started noticing my routines and how I do different things. And it's like, yeah, I don't really even need to be awake to do this. Like, I can do this unconsciously. But it's also kind of scary because you have these habits in your thought patterns as well, right? So when you want to hear your intuition, but you have all of these fears and anxiety and you're worried about judgment and things like that, you'll notice the pattern of how your mind talks you out of it. And you really have to start noticing those things in order to change them. You have to notice the fear, you have to notice the habit, notice how your mind is working, how the thought process goes. It really helps if you take specific time every single day to notice these things. I have been doing meditation for a while, and it makes such a huge difference. It gives you the specific time and space every single day, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, and it helps you focus on one thing, right? Whether it's the ones that I like are meditations that are about gratitude, or there's a morning routine one that talks about like affirmations. Just having that time that you're doing the same thing every day, it helps you focus your mind and it helps you realize what's happening in your mind. So then the next step, after you notice what's going on, you see the fear, you see the habits, the patterns, you see how you dismiss your intuition constantly, then you have to be willing to choose something different. And you're probably already in the process of noticing your fear. You're probably going to already start going down that road of being willing to change, of wanting to change, seeing that there needs to be a change, right? So then when you actively choose to be willing to do something different, then it makes it a whole lot easier to do something different, to choose something different. So instead of being controlled by fear, instead of focusing on worry, you focus on something different. You surrender to a feeling of love, of gratitude for the things that you have, for the feelings that you have, for the intuition that you have. And you'll notice once you do that, that there's a shift that takes place in your mind. It's kind of like when you buy a red car, you start seeing red cars everywhere, and you're like, man, I didn't know there were so many red cars. I never saw any red cars, and then I bought a red car, and now there's red cars everywhere. The same thing happens in your mind. When you are focused on fear and you're letting fear control your life, then you see fear everywhere, and everything becomes anxiety producing, right? Everything is a worry, it's a struggle, it's, you start with the what are you going to do if? But when you switch that around and you change that feeling to love and gratitude, then you start to notice love and gratitude everywhere else, and the fear disappears. And when your fear comes back up again, then you just keep surrendering and you keep choosing something different. And just like the red car, you'll start to see things that you're grateful for everywhere. And then comes the really fun part. Once you have moved past the fear and you know how to deal with all of that fear, then you get to start listening to the feelings that you have, the things that you just know. And it's kind of like noticing them, right? Witnessing them. What's going on? What's happening? What kind of feelings do I have? And you don't really have to act on them right away. You just have to start paying attention. You pay attention to, the feelings that you get around different people. You pay attention to the things that keep nagging at you, the things that you've been thinking about doing for a long time, but you haven't done, the things that don't make sense, but that your mind keeps going back to. Maybe there's a big life choice that you have that you've been struggling with, and you're like, I don't know what to do. I have this feeling that I should move, but I don't know. I don't know. But then once you notice them, then another big key is that you have to start acting on them. If you're going to build back the trust that you have in yourself, build back the trust in your intuition, then you have to start taking action on those things too. A big one for me was moving to Boston. Moving to North Carolina was part of it too, right? It took me 10 years to decide to move to North Carolina. But when I finally did, it was one of the best things that I've ever done in my life. So fast forward about 10 years, and I get this feeling I need to move to Boston. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know why I have this feeling. It's weird and it doesn't make sense. But it was good because I was at this turning point in my life where it was like, I need something new. I couldn't stay where I was and I needed to do something different. And I remembered the struggle that I had with that feeling of moving to North Carolina and how it took me 10 years to listen to it. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I don't know why I have this feeling. It doesn't really make any sense, but I'm just going to see what happens. So I started applying for jobs. And usually when I need a new job, it takes me more than a year to find a new job. Within 6 weeks, I had a job offer in Boston, and I didn't even live here. And I was like, okay, I guess that's a sign. Like, I need to go. I kind of work with like two different things that for me, they work together. I get feelings about things. So I attribute that to my intuition, right? This is what I need to do. And then I need some sort of confirmation. So I look for signs as well, because I believe that there are signs. And whether you believe in God or the universe or whatever your spirituality is, I believe that there are signs that lead us to what we're supposed to do and that will help confirm the feelings that we have, right? So when I moved to Boston, before I got that job, I got on a plane because I had to do an interview, an in-person interview. And when I walked into the place that I was interviewing at, they said, okay, somebody will be with you in a second, just have a seat. And when I sat down, I saw a heater that was sitting on the floor because it was April and it was like cold outside. But the heater was made by a company that my dad worked for 25 years. And most people don't have that brand of heater because it's expensive and it's not really sold very many places. It's sold more places now, but the one that they had was older. And because my dad worked there for so long, I can tell you all the differences between them. And they used to be made in the United States. I think that most of them are made in China now, but the ones that were made in the United States had a different design than the ones that were made overseas. And the one that they had on the floor in this place was one that was made in the United States. It was an older one. And so once I saw that heater sitting on the floor, I was like, that's a sign. Like, that's the sign I've been looking for. And this is my job. Like, I know I'm getting this job. And maybe it was the fact that I had the sign and I was just so confident in the interview that, like, hey, you're going to hire me. And that's usually not my attitude in interviews. But whatever it was, that was the job that I got. And that was why I moved. And that was almost over 3 years ago now. So, I mean, there's a lot of things like that work together that I feel like once I get one of those feelings, then I start taking action and I start looking for signs at the same time. Starting a blog was really the same way for me. It took me a little bit longer to find the confirmation that I was looking for, but I mean, writing for me was completely foreign. Before I started my blog, I was not really a writer. I had a journal that I kept. I've had a journal since I think like 2010. Um, and I like to keep track of my thoughts and keep track of the progress that I've made on different things. And sometimes I go back and lament the progress that I haven't made. But I've always had this feeling that I should be a writer, and I didn't know why. I hated English in school. I was always better at math. So much better that I studied engineering because most of engineering is math. It's algebra and calculus, and I loved that. So when I had this feeling that I should write something, it was like, that's weird. That doesn't make sense for me. I'm not a writer. I'm not good at writing. I'm terrible at spelling. I'm really bad at English. I'm not good at sentence structure. I'm just like, there's this whole list of excuses. But still, there was this nagging feeling for probably 20 years, honestly. It's like, you should write something. You should be a writer. I even used to read books about writing. And I mean, it took me that long to finally decide that, hey, this is a thing. Like, there's something to this. There's a reason that it just keeps coming back and keeps coming back and keeps coming back. And like, there's something that I need to do about this, right? So the more that you listen to the feelings that you get, the things that you notice, and the more that you act on them, the more trust that you'll build for yourself and for your intuition. I wanted to talk just real briefly about getting a bad feeling about people, because I've mentioned that a few times. For me, a lot of times it's when I meet somebody new, I'll get this feeling that's like, there's something weird about you. There's something that I don't like about you. And it's like, it's a very fleeting feeling that's like difficult to put your finger on because you don't know what it is and you don't have any proof, right? So I used to tell people about it. And that's where they would come back with all of the, you're judgmental, you need to stop acting like that. So what happened was I quit telling people about the feeling. And I would start looking at the bigger picture. And I would give people time basically to reveal themselves. Because people, that's what happens. You can't hide for very long. There's usually evidence of people who aren't good people. So once you wait for the evidence to come out, then it's easier to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be so close to this person, or maybe you're saying, like, what do you think about this person? And it just kind of comes up a little bit more naturally that way. I also feel like I should give people a chance too. So when I get those feelings, I don't really attach myself to those people. I try to stay a little bit distant from them and look for evidence. And there have been times that it wasn't what I thought, that maybe there was something else going on. And I've also had the opposite thing happen, where I had a good feeling about somebody and I thought this is going to be a really great thing. And they turned out to be not so great people. So it can go both ways. And I don't believe that I'm right 100% of the time, like all of the time, right? I believe that our intuition is important and that it is special, and that the more that you lean into it, the better that you'll get at reading people and at knowing what you should be doing. But I also leave room for the fact that we're all human and we all make mistakes. And sometimes we read things differently. Sometimes we want things to be a certain way and we want them so badly that we'll make that thing happen. And that means that we push away all of our intuition, all of our logic and reasoning, and we just go after that one thing that we want. And, again, that's a blessing and a curse, because it can be a good thing that you're committed to your dreams, but it can also be that you almost become blind because you're so single-minded about something. All right. So, I mean, there's a lot that you can do to help you get back in tune with your intuition, or to even tune into your intuition even more. If you feel like you're in a good place and you just want to know more, there's a lot that you can do. I'm actually working on a 30-day challenge to tune into your intuition. It's going to start January 1st. So if you're interested in joining, you should go check it out. You can find all the information at infjwoman.com/intuition. And basically it's a daily lesson that's like short, to the point lessons that will help you notice the fear that you have, notice the habits that you have, and then it'll give you a structure to remove those things from your life, and to listen to the voice that you have, and to really tune in a lot better than what you have been. So whether you're new, whether you've just found out that you're an INFJ and you're looking to enhance your intuition, whether you've been stuck in people pleasing and ignoring your intuition, or whether you're in a good place, it's really a good challenge, and it'll help you to tune in a lot more. And I feel like it's a great time of year to be doing this, because I don't know about you, but I've been focused on New Year's resolutions for a while. I like New Year's resolutions because I feel like it's a time where I like to analyze what happened this past year, what went well, what didn't go well, what I'd like to change. And I have a whole list of things that I want to change. And I know that my intuition is trying to tell me some things. And it's easy to get lost in the shuffle, especially the past couple of years with the pandemic. We've all been dealing with this time that's like, there's been so much fear and so much uncertainty. And whether, regardless of what your approach was, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of, I don't know what's going to happen. And for me, it's been a time where I've been like, I don't know if I should be planning for the future, which is scary because I love planning for the future. Like, that's what I do. I like to think about 5 to 10 years ahead of where we're at right now. So it's difficult, being stuck in this fearful place of I don't know what's going to happen. But hopefully, fingers and toes crossed, we're we're moving towards the end of all of that, and we can start getting back to hope, start getting back to gratitude and away from fear, and start making plans for the future. So if you're looking to tune into your intuition, you should definitely check out the challenge. I'll put a link for it um, in the comments, and then there'll also be a link for it in the group. And you can find it on the front page of my website too. It's only open for new enrollments until January 1st, and then it'll be closed. And I don't know when I'm going to offer it again. So if it's something that you're interested in, make sure that you check it out. Are you in tune with your intuition? Does it speak to you loud and clear, or do you question the messages that you get from it? I have to admit that I'm not always 100% in tune with my intuition as much as I would like to be. It's so easy to let all of the day-to-day things get in the way. But I want to help you get back on track and get perfectly in tune with your intuition. So I created a 30-day challenge to help you get really clear on what your intuition is trying to tell you and to help you tune in. The Tune Into Your Intuition Challenge offers simple, structured daily lessons and exercises that will get you in tune with your inner guide and make it easier for you to hear that inner voice that's trying to tell you exactly what you need to do. I've mastered this practice through my own deep desire to listen to my inner guide. Spending time listening to my intuition is the most important thing that I do every single day. It's kept me calm, healthy, and grateful no matter what may be going on in my life. You might find this kind of personal growth intimidating or think it's impossible to make these kinds of changes, or that you don't have time to dedicate to this challenge. I'm going to help you get through those fears right now, though. I've laid out a plan for you, and I'll guide you every single step of the way. It doesn't matter whether you've been leaning into your intuition for years or are a complete beginner. All you have to do is show up. And here's my promise. By the end of this 30-day challenge, you'll have a solid foundation of guidance, a calm and grateful mind, and an improved connection to your inner guide. The Tune Into Your Intuition Challenge starts January 1st, but if you sign up now, you'll gain first access to all of the prep work that will set you up for the extraordinary changes available to you in this challenge. Sign up now at infjwoman.com/intuition. There's a link in the show notes. Sign up now and consider your New Year's resolutions taken care of. Go to infjwoman.com/intuition to sign up now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate every single one of you. Please make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a review wherever you listen to the podcast. It helps other people to be able to find us. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you again next week. Hi there! I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing to my channel. I'm working very hard to produce content that will help you, and I really, really appreciate your support. Also, if you want some more inspiration, check out this video right here.